Media Fact Checker. Hong Kong's 2023 Wang Fuk Court fire inquiry and its alleged causes and responsibilities. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The fire occurred at Wang Fuk Court, a high-rise apartment complex in Hong Kong's Tai Po district, on the 26th of November, 2023. The blaze killed 168 people, making it the world's deadliest residential building fire since 1980 and the deadliest in Hong Kong's history. 7 out of 8 residential towers in the complex were engulfed by the fire, which spread rapidly due to bamboo scaffolding, protective netting, and foam boards. The complex was undergoing renovations at the time of the fire. Police have arrested 38 people on suspicion of manslaughter and 6 on suspicion of fraud. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources on core factual claims. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Nicola Olyslagers wins silver in women's high jump at World Athletics Indoor Championships 2024. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Nicola Olyslagers shared silver in the women's high jump at the World Athletics Indoor Championships in Torun, Poland. Olyslagers cleared 1.99 meters to finish second, tied with Yulia Levchenko, Ukraine, and Angelina Topic, Serbia. Yaroslava Mahuchik, Ukraine, won gold with a clearance of 2.01 meters. All 4 top finishers cleared 1.99 meters on their first attempt. Eleanor Patterson, Australia, finished 7th with a best of 1.93 meters. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports Olyslagers is a 2-time defending champion, 2024 and 2025, while Guardian does not specify her defending titles. Guardian reports Peter Bol had raced indoors only twice in his life before this event, while ABC does not mention this detail. Guardian reports Hayley Kitching's heat time as 2 minutes and 0.99 seconds, while ABC reports 2 minutes and 0.09 seconds. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Kangaroo Island Council's proposed feral cat eradication policy and progress. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Kangaroo Island Council is considering a last cat policy to ban new pet cats from being introduced to the island. Mayor Michael Pengelly supports the last cat policy and stated it would not immediately remove existing pet cats from owners. Feral cats have predated over 50 native species on Kangaroo Island, including the Kangaroo Island Dunnart and Little Penguin colonies. The Dudley Peninsula project on Kangaroo Island has removed 2,800 feral cats, leaving around 150 remaining. The federal government provided $1.61 million in December 2023 to the feral cat eradication project on Kangaroo Island. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states the council aims to eradicate feral cats by 2030, but Newscomau does not mention this specific timeline. ABC mentions the council's policy is not that far advanced and would be implemented in tandem with the state government, while Newscomau does not provide this level of detail on the policy's progress. ABC includes a quote from Mayor Pengelly stating it could take 10, 20, 30 years for the ideal outcome, but Newscomau does not repeat this exact phrasing. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Chelsea FC's humiliating Champions League exit against PSG in 2024 second leg match. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Chelsea lost to Paris Saint-Germain 3-0 at the Parc des Princes in the Champions League round of 16 second leg, resulting in an 8-2 aggregate defeat. Mamadou Sarr made a critical error in conceding a goal after Matvei Safonov's long ball was miscontrolled, leading to Kvicha Kvaratskhelia finish. Chelsea's first half included a 2-0 lead but collapsed, with PSG scoring 3 goals in the first 15 minutes of the second leg. Reece James was unavailable due to a hamstring injury sustained against Newcastle, forcing Mamadou Sarr to play at right back for the first time in his career. Chelsea's pre-match huddles around the referee Paul Tierney drew criticism and sparked controversy. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 describes Chelsea's first half as an enthusiastic but skittish start quickly deteriorating, while Article 2 frames it as a 2-0 lead that could have been sustained with PSG able to score whenever they felt like it. Article 1 attributes Chelsea's defensive struggles to inability to generate any real feeling and sterile shuffling, while Article 2 attributes it to systemic failings and individual errors rooted in Rosenior's Hull City struggles. Article 1 highlights Chelsea's modern Chelsea project as a huge stretch and insubstantial, while Article 2 ties their struggles directly to £1.5 billion spent to get to this point and illicit means transfer history. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Queensland government appoints controversial ex-police officer to legal aid board amid Palm Island tensions. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Darren Robinson, a former Townsville police officer and current lawyer, was appointed to Queensland's Legal Aid Board by Attorney General Deb Frecklington in February 2024 after the LNP government replaced all Labor-appointed members. Robinson was a senior sergeant, then Sen SGT, and friend of Christopher Hurley, the officer acquitted of manslaughter in the 2004 death in custody of Mulrunji Dumaji on Palm Island. Robinson investigated a prior complaint against Hurley in 2004, ruling it fictitious. The inquest described his investigation as superficial, biased and misleading, and his conclusion as dishonest and flew in the face of objective evidence. The 2015 federal court civil case, Justice Mortimer's findings, alleged Robinson told Jacinta Barry after the 2004 riots not to seek police help if abused by her partner, and that he conveyed speculative, stereotyped suspicions about Palm Island residents to police. The Crime and Misconduct Commission recommended in 2015 that Robinson and 3 other officers be disciplined for their roles in the Palm Island response, but no disciplinary action was taken. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Robinson was described in federal court documents as a principal antagonist in events surrounding Mulrunji Dumaji's death, while Article 2 does not mention this exact term but focuses on his dark stain on character and integrity. Article 1 quotes Justice Mortimer's 2015 ruling that Robinson's conduct amounted to harassment and conveyed speculative, stereotyped suspicions, but Article 2 does not reference these specific legal findings. Article 1 includes Robinson's LinkedIn profile omission of his police career, while Article 2 does not address this detail. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Donald Trump publicly discloses Florida Rep Neal Dunn's terminal health diagnosis during White House press conference. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump revealed that Republican Congressman Neal Dunn had a terminal diagnosis and would have been dead by June without White House medical intervention. Neal Dunn is a 73-year-old Florida representative who has served since 2017 and announced earlier this year he would not seek re-election. Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, confirmed Dunn's diagnosis was grim and that he had a terminal condition, though he noted it was not previously public. Trump connected Dunn with White House doctors who performed a long operation involving stents, giving him a new lease on life per Johnson. Dunn's office declined to comment on Trump's remarks, and Johnson later stated Dunn has a great new lease on life and feels healthy. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 claims Trump's comment about Dunn's health was unbecoming and could normalize crassness, while Article 2 does not address the tone or appropriateness of the disclosure. Article 1 includes Trump's exact phrasing "I did it for him first and for the vote second," which is not repeated in Article 2. Article 1 mentions the White House's denial of questions about Trump's neck rash as false and slanderous, while Article 2 does not reference this controversy. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Utah woman convicted of murdering her husband via fentanyl poisoning and related crimes. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Carrie Richins was convicted of aggravated murder for poisoning her husband Eric Richins with fentanyl in March 2022. The lethal dose of fentanyl was slipped into a cocktail Eric Richins drank at their home outside Park City, Utah. Richins was $4.5 million in debt and falsely believed she would inherit over $4 million from her husband's estate. She was also convicted of attempted murder, Valentine's Day 2022, via a fentanyl-laced sandwich that caused Eric to black out. Carrie Richins was convicted of fraudulently claiming insurance benefits after Eric's death. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and SMH both report Carrie's internet searches for what is a lethal dose of fentanyl, but only The Guardian explicitly ties this to her planning the murder. The Guardian and SMH both report Carrie's defense claimed Eric was addicted to painkillers, but only the SMH notes Carrie's earlier police video statement denying his drug use history. The Guardian and SMH both report Carrie's debt as $4.5 million, but only The Guardian specifies the exact inheritance figure, $4 million plus. This story was covered by The Guardian, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US-led Middle East conflict escalation and international response over Strait of Hormuz and energy attacks. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. European leaders, UK, France, Germany, Italy, Netherlands, and Japan issued a joint statement condemning Iran for attacks on commercial shipping vessels and civilian energy facilities in the Strait of Hormuz on 2024 XXXX, exact date not specified. The joint statement called for an immediate comprehensive moratorium on attacks on civilian infrastructure, including oil and gas installations, and expressed readiness to contribute to ensuring safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran retaliated against an Israeli strike on its South Pars natural gas field by attacking a major Qatari LNG facility, Ras Laffan, in Qatar, causing 17% of Qatar's LNG export capacity to be eliminated, valued at $20 billion US, 28 billion Australian dollars. Brent crude oil prices briefly rose above $119 per barrel on the same day as the attacks. Japanese Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi visited US President Donald Trump at the White House, positioning Japan as a conduit between the US and other allies in the Middle East. But not all outlets told the same story. The articles do not contradict each other on core facts, but both sources reference Trump's claim that he did not inform allies about the war in advance, yet US media reports, not cited in the articles, suggest Washington was aware of and supported the Israeli attack on Iran's South Pars gas field in advance, contradicting Trump's public statements. No explicit contradictions exist between the two sources, as they are nearly identical in content and phrasing. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Indonesian activist Andri Yunus acid attack and militarization concerns under Prabowo Subianto. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Andri Yunus, deputy coordinator of Contra-S, suffered serious burns covering over 20% of his body in an acid attack in Jakarta on, date unspecified, likely early 2026. 4 Indonesian military officers, ranks, captain, First Lieutenant, Second Sergeant, from the TNI Strategic Intelligence Agency were arrested over the attack, announced by Major General Yusri Nurianto on, date unspecified, likely same day. The attack occurred as Yunus rode his motorbike home after recording a podcast on remilitarization and judicial review of Indonesia's military law. CCTV footage shows Yunus writhing in pain on the street before bystanders intervened. President Prabowo Subianto condemned the attack as terrorism and vowed to investigate whoever ordered and financed it. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1, ABC, reports the military arrested 4 suspects, while national police claim only 2 suspects are involved in the attack. Article 1, ABC, states the 4 arrested officers are formally declared suspects, but local media reports they have not been formally named as suspects. Article 1, ABC, attributes the arrest announcement to Major General Yusri Nurianto, but no second source confirms this specific quote or rank hierarchy. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's fuel supply risks amid Middle East conflict and regional export restrictions. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Australia imports around 90% of its fuel, making it highly dependent on foreign refineries during the global oil crisis. Malaysia is Australia's third largest supplier of refined fuels, per Newscamau, and a top source of crude oil, per Guardian. Malaysia's embassy warned Australia that the country would prioritise our own needs before considering overseas demand, Newscamau, Guardian. South Korea has capped petrol and diesel exports to safeguard its own supply, reducing Australia's jet fuel supply by 32%, Newscamau. Chris Bowen, Energy Minister, stated Malaysia has taken no action to threaten fuel supply to Australia and all expected ships have arrived, Newscamau, Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscamau says Malaysia is Australia's third largest supplier of refined fuels, while Guardian states Malaysia is Australia's top source of crude oil. Newscamau reports Malaysia produces and refines a lot more fuel than Malaysia or Malaysians would need, but Guardian frames this as a warning rather than a reassurance. Guardian states Chris Bowen conceded some petrol stations are running low, while Newscamau only mentions Bowen dismissing Malaysia's warning without acknowledging local shortages. This story was covered by The Guardian and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. 2 individuals arrested for attempting to enter UK naval base hosting nuclear submarines. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 2 people, a 34-year-old man and a 31-year-old woman, were arrested after attempting to enter HM Naval Base Clyde, Fars Lane, in Scotland on the 19th of March, 2026 around 5 p.m. local time. The man arrested was identified as an Iranian national. The woman's nationality was initially reported as unknown but later specified as Romanian in one source. The base houses the UK's nuclear-armed Trident submarines and is not open to the public. Police Scotland confirmed the arrests and stated inquiries are ongoing, with the pair charged in connection to the incident. The Royal Navy confirmed the arrests but cited an ongoing investigation as the reason for not providing further comment. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports the woman's nationality was unknown, while The Guardian, Article 3, later specifies she is Romanian. The Guardian, Article 1, states the incident is not considered serious by the MOD, but ABC does not mention this assessment. ABC highlights ongoing MI5 warnings about Iranian threats, while The Guardian, Article 1, does not emphasize this context. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US-Iran conflict escalation and its economic political fallout for Trump ahead of midterms. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Petrol prices in the US have risen by over 80 cents per gallon since the start of the Iran conflict. The Trump administration coordinated the largest ever release of emergency oil stocks, 400 million barrels, with G7 and IEA member countries. The U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve, SPR, contributed over a quarter of the 400 million barrels released, depleting it from 60% to 45% capacity. Each SPR cavern can hold oil equivalent to 2 stacked Empire State Buildings, with total capacity of 700 million barrels. Brent crude price exceeded $104 per barrel as the Strait of Hormuz remained closed for the first time in modern history. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the 2 sources as they contain identical text. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Man charged with murder after elderly body found in Victoria's Jung, court hearing details. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Robert Beck, 49, from Minyip, is charged with murder in connection with the death of an elderly man, believed to be in his 80s, found near the intersection of Henty HWY and Finlayson Road in Jung, Victoria, on Monday morning at approximately 9:15 a.m. The deceased sustained 24 injuries according to police forensic evidence. Beck was arrested on Monday evening in Horsham after police found him behaving erratically and in possession of a knife on Firebrace St. He was taken to hospital and later charged by detectives from the homicide squad. Beck has been diagnosed with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and borderline personality disorder, and disclosed physical injuries to police. Police requested 12 weeks to prepare evidence but were granted only 8 weeks by Magistrate Timothy Hoare, with further delays expected. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources on core factual claims. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Victorian government finalises planning reforms for high-density housing near transport hubs in Melbourne. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Victorian government finalised planning controls for 25 of 60 activity centres around transport hubs in Melbourne, including Coburg, Brunswick, Brighton, Hawthorn, Oakley, and Kew Junction. Parts of Brunswick and Coburg's activity centres will allow buildings up to 20 stories, an increase from the previously proposed 16 stories. Middle Brighton's activity centre has height limits of up to 12 stories, selected sites, and mostly 6 to 8 stories, with Oakley and Kew Junction reduced to 6 to 10 stories in some areas. The government received feedback from over 12,500 Victorians that shaped the final plans, including changes to height limits and greener streetscapes. Buildings meeting planning rules in core train tram zones are deemed to comply, meaning they cannot be sent to VCAT for review. But not all outlets told the same story. Theage states the government's activity centres aim to unlock capacity for more than 300,000 homes by 2051, while the ABC does not explicitly mention this exact number but focuses on the 300,000 figure as part of broader context. Theage highlights that the government's plan includes middle-ring suburbs like Carnegie and Bayside Hampton, while the ABC does not mention these suburbs in its list of finalised zones. Theage reports the Grattan Institute's estimate of only about 110,000 homes being financially feasible under current conditions, but the ABC does not reference this specific figure or report it as a contradiction to the government's 300,000 target. This story was covered by ABC News and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Donald Trump's Pearl Harbor joke during White House meeting with Japan's PM Sonai Takeichi. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump joked about the 1941 Pearl Harbor attack during a White House press conference with Japan's Prime Minister Sonai Takeichi on December 7, 2023, ABC, SMH, Guardian. Trump's exact words included, "We didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan?" ABC, Guardian. The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor killed 2,390 Americans and occurred on December 7, 1941, ABC, Guardian. Prime Minister Sonai Takeichi visibly reacted with discomfort, shifting in her seat and widening her eyes, ABC, SMH, Guardian. Trump previously made a similar quip about D-Day in front of Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz in June 2023, ABC, Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports Trump said Japan was stepping up to the plate on Iran, while SMH describes Japan's public opposition as over 80% against involvement, SMH poll versus ABC's framing. ABC states Trump's tone toward Takeichi was far more friendly than toward other allies, but SMH implies Trump's focus on Iran overshadowed diplomatic warmth, ABC versus SMH tone analysis. ABC includes details about the U.S. dispatching the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit and USS Tripoli to the Middle East, but The Guardian does not mention these deployments. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian fuel crisis driven by Middle East conflict and Strait of Hormuz blockade. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Albanese is convening a snap National Cabinet meeting on Thursday, May 2nd, to coordinate a national response to the fuel crisis, involving all state and territory leaders, Articles 2, 3, 5, 6. The Strait of Hormuz carries about 20% of global oil supply, and its blockade by Iran has caused fuel price spikes and supply chain disruptions, Articles 1, 3, 4, 5. Australia has released nearly 1/5, 20%, of its domestic petrol and diesel reserves into the market to address shortages, Articles 3, 5, 6. Energy Minister Chris Bowen warned of bumpy supply from next month due to expected scarcity of Middle Eastern crude oil, with at least 6 ships destined for Australia cancelled, Articles 1, 4. The government temporarily relaxed fuel standards to allow higher sulphur levels, injecting an extra 100 million litres of fuel per month for 60 days, Articles 3, 5. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and ABC report the government is preparing new measures to shield households, but The Guardian specifically calls for free public transport, which is not mentioned in other sources, Articles 3, 5. The Guardian and ABC highlight opposition criticism of Bowen's handling of fuel distribution, with The Guardian quoting Angus Taylor directly, while other sources do not provide such direct opposition quotes, Articles 3, 5. The Guardian and ABC emphasize the government's response to demand-driven shortages, but The Guardian's Greens leader Larissa Waters suggests the crisis is primarily supply-driven, which contradicts the government's narrative, Articles 3, 5. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Democrats impeach Florida AG Pam Bondi over Epstein files briefing refusal. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Democrats walked out of a closed-door briefing with Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi on Jeffrey Epstein files on Wednesday, calling it an outrageous fake hearing. Bondi refused to commit to testifying under oath despite a subpoena voted by the House Oversight Committee earlier this month. 5 Republicans joined Democrats in voting to subpoena Bondi to question the Justice Department's handling of Epstein investigation files. Bondi and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche attended the briefing to address bipartisan frustration over the release of Epstein-related documents. California Congressman Robert Garcia called the briefing an outrageous fake hearing after Bondi's refusal to testify under oath. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Bondi accused Democrats of using Epstein documents to distract from Trump's political successes, but Article 2 does not mention this specific accusation. Article 1 includes Bondi's defense that the Justice Department's handling of documents was not politically motivated, while Article 2 focuses more on the Democrats' impeachment push without repeating this defense. Article 1 provides specific details about Bondi's alleged spying on Congress, while Article 2 does not mention this allegation. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Donald Trump criticizes NATO allies and Australia for refusing to assist in Iran war and Strait of Hormuz blockade. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump publicly stated on social media that the US no longer need or desire NATO countries' assistance and we do not need the help of anyone in the Iran war, naming Japan, Australia, and South Korea as exceptions, The Age, Newscomau, Guardian, SMH, ABC. Transport Minister Catherine King, Australia, confirmed Australia would not send a ship to the Strait of Hormuz to help unblock the shipping passage, The Age, SMH, ABC. Iran has effectively blocked the Strait of Hormuz since the US-Israeli campaign against Iran began, causing global oil supply disruptions and surging fuel prices, Newscomau, Guardian, ABC. Joe Kent, Trump's appointee to head the National Counterterrorism Center, resigned on Tuesday, stating he could not in good conscience support the war and accused Israeli officials and media of influencing US policy, Thiege, SMH. French President Emmanuel Macron ruled out sending ships to the Strait of Hormuz, stating France is not party to the conflict, Thiege, SMH. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Trump said he was very surprised Australia declined to send troops, but Thiege and ABC state Australia had not received a formal request for assistance. Guardian versus Thiege ABC. The Guardian states Trump said we always say yes to them when allies ask for help, while Thiege and ABC emphasized Trump's repeated claims that the US does not need anyone's help. Guardian versus Thiege ABC. The Guardian includes a live blog with unrelated domestic news, e.g., Cyclone Narelle, while other sources focus exclusively on the Trump-NATO-Australia conflict. Guardian versus Thiege News Kamau SMH ABC. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Elderly woman dies in Tasmanian boating accident after being thrown overboard by another vessel's wake. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A 70-something-year-old Tasmanian woman died after being thrown overboard from a 4.5m fiberglass recreational boat in the Marion Narrows waterway near Marion Bay, Tasmania, on Wednesday at 11:45 a.m. 3 of the 4 people aboard the boat were thrown into the water when it hit the chop or wave of another vessel. 2 were rescued. 1, the woman, was later found deceased. The boat was a 4.5m fiberglass half-cabin runabout with 4 adults aboard, all known to each other, who were enjoying a day on the water. Nearby vessels assisted in the rescue, and police thanked the public for their timely intervention. The deceased woman's body was recovered by police after a search and rescue operation. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states the boat was a 4.5m recreational vessel with a fiberglass hull, while ABC specifies it was a fiberglass half-cabin runabout. No hull material discrepancy but structural detail differs. News Kamau does not mention the 2 rescued individuals being taken to hospital, while ABC explicitly states this. News Kamau omits the detail that all 4 adults were known to each other, which ABC includes. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Trump orders ICE agents to US airports amid DHS shutdown and security line crises. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump threatened to deploy ICE agents to US airports on Monday, the 24th of March, 2026, if Democrats did not fund DHS, per Guardian, 2 sources, and ABC, 2 sources. More than 400 TSA workers have quit since the partial government shutdown began on the 14th of February, 2026, per Guardian, 2 sources, and ABC, 2 sources. TSA personnel are set to miss a second full paycheck on the 27th of March, 2026 due to the shutdown, per Guardian, 2 sources, and ABC, 2 sources. ICE agents are not specifically trained for airport security, which is TSA's domain, per Guardian, 2 sources, and ABC, 2 sources. The partial government shutdown entered its 36th day by the 20th of March, 2026, per Guardian, 2 sources, and ABC, 2 sources. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1, Guardian, states Trump's post said ICE would do security like no one has ever seen before, while Article 3, ABC, quotes Homan saying ICE would only guard exits or check IDs, not perform full security duties. Article 2, ABC, claims hundreds of thousands of Homeland Security workers are working without pay, while other sources report only TSA workers, 400 plus quit, and no mention of hundreds of thousands. Article 3, ABC, says Homan pledged a plan by Sunday evening for deployment details, but Article 5, Guardian, states details were still being finalized on Sunday. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian Labor Party considering reforms to capital gains tax discount amid housing crisis debates. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A Greens-led Senate inquiry, 2024, found the 50% capital gains tax, CGT, discount skews housing ownership toward investors, benefiting wealthier Australians and distorting productive investment. Labor senators and the Greens report, 143 pages, states the CGT discount contributes to housing crisis, wealth inequality, and intergenerational equity issues. The 50% CGT discount applies to assets held for at least 1 year under current Australian tax law. Liberal senators Andrew Bragg and Dave Sharma dissented, calling the inquiry report a simplistic analysis that ignores housing supply shortages. The inquiry report was tabled on Tuesday, 2024, with findings released publicly. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Treasury is modelling a 33% CGT discount for housing investors, but ABC notes Treasury and Grattan Institute estimate a reduced discount would lead to fewer homes built, implying no specific 33% figure is confirmed. ABC states a reduced CGT discount would result in 10,000 fewer homes built over 5 years, while The Guardian does not provide a specific number of homes affected by reform. The Guardian quotes Senator Pocock recommending a 25% discount for new homes, but ABC does not mention this specific proposal and instead focuses on a differential rate for old vs new homes. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Leadership crisis and potential spill in Victorian Labor Party ahead of 2024 election. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Jacinta Allan is Victorian Premier and faces leadership spill speculation ahead of the November 2024 state election. Her net approval rating is -37%, Demos AU poll in Herald Sun, and 69% of coalition voters would direct preferences to One Nation over Labour, Redbridge survey for Australian Financial Review. Deputy Premier Ben Carroll, right faction, and Transport Infrastructure Minister Gabrielle Williams, left faction, are the most likely leadership contenders. Allan became Victorian Premier in September 2023 after succeeding Daniel Andrews. Labour's 2023 state election result was better than expected, temporarily easing leadership pressure on Allan. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports a grouping of socialist left MPs within the southeast are driving the push for a leadership change, but these MPs deny it. The Age says a factional chief offered the view that anyone other than Allan would lead the party to a better result, while ABC states no one has suggested anyone was counting numbers. The Guardian claims a push for a leadership change is underway with more than a dozen sources confirming it, but ABC says no one has approached ministers to canvass a change. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. BHP and Woodside Energy announce new CEOs amid leadership transitions and corporate updates. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Brandon Craig will become BHP's Chief Executive and Director from July 1, 2025, succeeding Mike Henry. Brandon Craig previously served as BHP America's president and led the company's iron ore operations in Western Australia. BHP's market value makes it one of Australia's biggest companies by market capitalisation. Mike Henry's 6.5-year tenure at BHP saw the company become the world's largest copper producer. Elizabeth Westcott was appointed Woodside Energy's permanent CEO and Managing Director in 2025, succeeding Meg O'Neill. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the sources. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Federal judge blocks Pentagon's press access restrictions under Trump administration's policy. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A federal judge, Paul Friedman, blocked key portions of the Pentagon's press access policy introduced in October 2025, ruling it unconstitutional under the First Amendment. The policy prohibited journalists from soliciting information the Pentagon did not directly provide and allowed revocation of credentials for non-compliant outlets. Only one of 56 news outlets in the Pentagon Press Association agreed to sign the new policy, leading to the loss of passes for most major outlets including the New York Times, Washington Post, and AP. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth approved the policy change in October 2025, and the Pentagon assembled a new press corps consisting of pro-Trump outlets after the exodus of mainstream reporters. The Trump administration plans to appeal the judge's ruling, with Pentagon spokesperson Sean Parnell stating they disagree with the decision. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states the policy prohibited journalists from soliciting information the Pentagon did not directly provide, while ABC frames it as prohibiting journalists from seeking unauthorized information without specifying the Pentagon's role in authorization. The Guardian mentions the Pentagon assembled a new press corps of pro-Trump outlets and media personalities as evidence of viewpoint-based restrictions, but ABC does not explicitly state this as a direct consequence of the policy. The Guardian highlights that Justice Department lawyers acknowledged the policy was partly subjective, while ABC does not include this acknowledgement in its reporting. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Israel's strike on Iran's South Pars gas field triggers regional energy crisis and retaliation. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Israel bombed Iranian facilities linked to the South Pars gas field, the largest natural gas field in the world, shared with Qatar. ABC, Guardian, ABC, Guardian, Guardian, ABC, Guardian, Guardian. South Pars is part of a 9,700 square kilometer gas field, with Iran's share estimated at 14 to 51 trillion cubic meters. ABC, Guardian. Iran retaliated by striking Qatar's Ras Laffan gas complex, causing extensive damage and knocking out about 17%, or 12.8 million tons per year, of Qatar's LNG export capacity. ABC, Guardian, Guardian, ABC, Guardian, Guardian. QatarEnergy CEO Saad Al-Kaabi stated repairs at Ras Laffan could take 3 to 5 years, with $20 billion in damages. ABC, Guardian, Guardian, Guardian. Iran's Revolutionary Guards warned Saudi Arabia's Samref refinery, Yanbu, UAE's Al Hosn gas field, and Qatar's Mesaieed petrochemical complex as direct and legitimate targets. Guardian, Guardian, Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC and Guardian both report Trump claimed ignorance of the South Pars attack, but Israeli officials and Yoel Gazansky, ABC, stated the US was informed or coordinated the attack. The Guardian reports Trump's defense secretary Pete Hegseth accused the press of exaggerating the war's risks, while Trump's own officials, e.g., Treasury Secretary, suggested contradictory policies like lifting sanctions on Iranian cargoes. ABC states Trump's Truth Social post denied US knowledge of the attack, but Israeli officials and Reuters, ABC, reported the US was aware beforehand. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Kyle Sandilands' $100 million contract termination and legal battle with ARN Media over on-air dispute. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Kyle Sandilands' $100 million contract with ARN Media was terminated on March 4, 2026, following an on-air argument with co-host Jackie O. Henderson on February 20, 2026. ARN Media issued a notice of termination to Sandilands on February 27, 2026, citing serious misconduct and breach of contract during the February 20 broadcast. Sandilands and Henderson had separate $100 million, 10-year contracts with ARN Media signed in 2023, totaling $200 million for the duo until 2034. The Kyle and Jackie O show was suspended on March 3, 2026, and ARN confirmed the show would no longer be presented after Henderson's contract was terminated 2 weeks prior. Henderson's contract was terminated by ARN after her representatives told management she could not continue working with Sandilands, with Henderson denying she quit or resigned. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and ABC both report ARN issued a notice of termination to Sandilands on February 27, 2026, but the SMH and the Age suggest ARN's decision was premeditated and opportunistic, with ARN seeing a chance to get out of the contract rather than acting on genuine misconduct. Henderson's representatives told ARN she could not continue working with Sandilands, reported by SMH, ABC, and Newskamau, but Henderson herself has denied quitting or resigning from the show in multiple statements, ABC, SMH. The Guardian and ABC state ARN disputes Sandilands' claims and intends to defend the proceedings, while the Age quotes media lawyer Sean Miller calling ARN's position roadkill and suggesting Sandilands has a strong legal argument. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Amazon's Jury Duty TV hoax series and its second season, Company Retreat, featuring unsuspecting participants. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The original Jury Duty series premiered in 2023 on Amazon's Freevee platform. Ronald Gladden was the unsuspecting lead actor in Jury Duty Season 1, believing he was participating in a documentary about a jury trial. Jury Duty Season 1 won a Peabody Award for bringing out the best in people through reality television. Anthony Norman from Nashville was the unsuspecting lead actor in Jury Duty Presents, Company Retreat, Season 2. Over 10,000 people applied for the role of the unsuspecting lead in Jury Duty Presents, Company Retreat via Craigslist. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the cash prize for the unsuspecting lead in Jury Duty Presents, Company Retreat was $150,000, while Article 2 claims the original Jury Duty Season 1 prize was $100,000 without specifying the second season's prize amount. Article 1 describes Anthony Norman's reactions as often playful and engaging, while Article 2 portrays him as showing sheer boredom during the retreat's absurdities. Article 1 emphasizes the extensive preparation and meticulous planning behind the second season, including building structures and rehearsing intricate details, while Article 2 focuses more on the show's darker or more bizarre elements without detailing the production's efforts. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis.